The Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 14th chapter. On one occasion when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host, who invited both of you, may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then, in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or sisters or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. The Gospel of the Lord. I'm trying to remember if ever there was a time we read from the Apocrypha at any worship service in my 25 years of being a pastor. I don't recall. So just real quick, the Apocrypha is, at the end of the Old Testament is Malachi. There's about 400 years between Malachi and the Gospels. There's about a 400-year stretch. And there are writings from that time. And they call that the Apocrypha. I don't remember what that means. It's a big Greek word. Ask Pastor Doug. The Apocrypha. And there many things happen in there. The revolt of the Maccabees. There's this great book called Bel and the Dragon. And there's this fun stuff in there. But there's also these great verses. There's these great things that we can learn. So some communities do not accept the Apocrypha as a part of what we call the canon, the Bible that we read. But the Lutherans actually do. We say these are good and edifying to read and to know and to dwell in. And I love today's text. I think it's really beautiful. This idea of pride and the idea of how pride, we were not created to have pride. Did you see that at the end? Pride was not made for us. God wasn't like, yeah, you should have pride. And I don't think it means pride in terms of like being proud of our kids or being proud of things, but really like pride that consumes us. Pride that makes us think that our needs are greater than others. Pride that puts us in front of other people. I mean, let's be honest. In our country, in our culture, we sort of swim in the waters of pride all the time. I mean, we just cannot help but be culturally infected by pride. We think about pride all the time. We think about whose car is next to me, and is my car a little nicer than theirs, and maybe I should get a little nicer car than theirs, or maybe what's their educational status, what's my educational status, or how are they doing? We do a lot of ranking in our community. We do a lot of kids in particular. We don't mean to, but we are pressuring our kids to be better and better than the people around them and be better than us. It's a nasty thing that our culture sort of swims in. And I think it's an interesting thing that Jesus decided then to use the idea of meals and eating as a way to address the idea of pride. Because we can really see the concept of pride when it comes to who we eat with and how we eat and what that looks like in our community. Jesus talks often about the rich. They feasted sumptuously, while the poor only had crumbs at the table. There's something about food and understanding how this affects us and where our culture is that I think is really critical. And I got to thinking about that this week, and I started to look at other cultures and how they approach meals and how they approach food and how that's very different than our own. And I started thinking about some of my own experiences of being humbled in other people's presence. I've never been to Tanzania, but I have friends in my first church. We had a very active Tanzanian ministry there. And they talked about how whenever they would come to a village, they would sacrifice one of the village's goats. They would kill the village goat. Now, for some reason, they called this a banana. I don't know why. It was like a cultural thing. The banana was the thing you give your guests, but that happened to be that the banana was a goat. I don't know what it means. Ask somebody from Tanzania. It would make a lot more sense. They probably would give you a much better answer than I could. But they would take the goat and they would cook it for the people that were gathered. But here's the thing. They took the choice cut, the first choice cut of the goat's meat, and they would bring it to the poorest person in the village. They would take the meat that was the best part of it, and they would bring it to the poorest person in the village first, before anybody ate. It was reflective of a concept in their culture called Ubuntu. I don't know if any of you have heard the word Ubuntu. Anybody has heard the word Ubuntu? Yeah. It's this concept of the idea, that the way that you can translate it is, I am because you are, and you are because I am. In other words, how you're doing is how I'm doing. So if you're hurt, you're sick, you're struggling, you're in pain, then I am too. I am because you are, and you are because I am. Their concept is that we as a community work together to make sure we are all functioning in a way that we are only doing as well as our poorest, our most hurting, the most struggling in our community. We're only doing as good as they are. So they go out of their way to care and support the poorest in their community. I was thinking about a time when I went to Haiti. And you go to Haiti, and it's the same concept. The people, when you go and visit them, they will cook this meal for you, this beautiful meal. I know we've had some people here go to Haiti. Anyone here have been to Haiti? We have a very strong ministry. You've done everything. All of this concept of Haiti. And they would cook you this huge meal. Now, here is a group of people that are living on less than $1 a day. Less than $1 a day. And so probably to make this meal, they've taken a week, 2 weeks of their income to provide you, maybe a little bit of meat, maybe some chicken, maybe a little goat, to provide maybe some plantains, maybe some beans and rice. And it's so humbling as you're sitting there eating in front of them, realizing that you're eating 2 weeks of their work. And how easy it would be to be like, oh, well, thank you, that was good, thank you very much. But when you really begin to think about what this meant to them to give this to you, there's a part of me that wants to be like, no, you all eat this. You all eat this. But then that would be very offensive. Imagine if somebody came up to you and said, I did 2 weeks of work on this. I brought this to you. Here's my gift to you. And you went, no, you keep it. That would be very offensive. So you have to eat this meal in the face of these people who are struggling poor and take joy in it. It's very humbling, very humbling. Or I remember a time when I was in Palestine and we were visiting this little town called Atwani. It was way out in the middle of nowhere. They owned olive orchards. This village owned an olive orchard. And nearby was we were there to visit because there was a nearby settlement that was harassing the people in the olive orchard, burning their olives, attacking their kids, things like that as they walked by. It was an awful situation. And so we're there to listen and to learn from them about what it looked like to live in Palestine. And while we're there, they cooked a meal for us. They make these breads that they put right on the hot coals, and they fill it with lamb and things. And then they brought these stools. And they put these 2 or 3 stools, which I think were about every stool the village owned. And they invited us to sit on the stools while the elders of the village sat at our feet. And they did not eat until we had eaten first. So here we are eating while this 80-year-old Palestinian woman's watching me, and we're trying to have a conversation. It's radically humbling. And I can see why Jesus would talk about meals and how meals and food has this effect on us. You see, when we think about humility, we often interpret it as to think that we're not good people, or when somebody gives us a compliment, we have this thing in our culture, we're like, no, I didn't do blah, blah, blah. Or I really loved your food. Oh, I can't. Or what a great, thank you so much for helping. Oh, I barely helped. I did it. It's this weird way in which we kind of think that humility means not honoring the things that we're given. But that's not what humility looks like here. The humility is more just understanding who you are and where you are in relationship to others. Humility is more about understanding that you and I are in relationship to one another and we are connected to one another. And therefore, to take pride would be to take arrogance, to think that my needs, my stuff, what I need is more important than yours. That's pride. Humility is saying, look, I know myself well enough that I have enough to eat, so please, you eat first. It's not about thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Putting your needs down so that other needs can be lifted up. It's about holding up the others so that they have a sense of pride and strength and character, that you're giving dignity to the others because you don't need any more. You've got enough. Are you following? You have what you need. So how do you take the strength, character, and stuff that you have and give it to the others so that they can be exalted, not you? So Jesus gives the example. So don't invite the rich and the poor because now you're in just an economic relationship. I'm going to give to you so that you'll invite me to your house. I'm going to invite you over so that there will be this economic exchange. But instead, invite, it says, the poor, the widow, the cripple, the orphan, the outsider. Sit with them because that's going to humble you. That's going to make you really humble when you sit with them. I don't see this setting so radically into one of the most dangerous, harmful places that I know in the United States, the junior high cafeteria. I mean, it is a jungle. It is prey and predator. It is, right? Am I right? I mean, think about that. I mean, I say this not being critical or judgmental or angry. Junior high kids are some of the most complicated, difficult humans on the planet. And it's not because they're bad or good. It's because they're going through a very difficult time. They're going through a very difficult time. They're not a kid anymore, and they're not an adult. They don't know if I'm supposed to play or I'm supposed to act like adults do. And suddenly, their hair turns weird. And my hair suddenly went from blonde to brown. What was that about? I had nice blonde hair, and then poof, it was gone. And my feet grew too big, and I couldn't dance, and I couldn't move, and all the things I used to do. And now I'm just kind of talking like this, and I got pimples all over myself, and my hair's weird, and I can't walk normal, and what's wrong with me? And I feel so bad, I'm going to tear down everybody around me so that they'll feel as bad as I do. The junior high cafeteria is a jungle. But can you imagine being the new kid in that space? The new kid who has to walk in there and figure out, where are you going to sit? Do you sit with the popular kids? At the risk of maybe them saying, you don't sit with us. And be rejected like the master of that table to the person who put themselves? Do you sit with those kids? But then if you sit with those kids, then the other kids will know that you are becoming a target they can pick on because they pick on those kids. Are you following? So do you sit by yourself? Isolation and loneliness? I love this example because I think, how many people here relate to this topic? Yeah. So junior high kids, look around you. You're not alone. We've all walked the road. It is hard. But what it means is that we put ourselves in the place to be the kid at that table who says, come sit with me. And knowing that might humble you by inviting the new kid to your table, by saying you come and you sit with me because you don't know what the other kids are going to do to you because they sat at your table. You don't know what that will do, but that is the sense of what Jesus is trying to get us to understand today. That our role is not to live out of pride and arrogance. It's to lay down all the stuff of the trappings of pride and to see the other as a child of God, a living human who deserves dignity, character, and respect, and to lay your stuff down so that they may be exalted. And in particular, this text points us that we see that in the poor, the prisoner, the outcast, the refugee, the kids who are struggling with their identity, who don't quite understand who they are yet, whether they're sexual, their gender, who knows what's going on inside them, but to lay down our stuff so that we see them as the child of God that we are and invite them to our table, to the place of honor. Invite them to the table so that they are given the dignity and respect. Jesus gave away all dignity, stripped, beaten, mocked, hung on a cross, tore it all down, but then was raised to new life so that we could see that that's the path we're to take, to die to the things that hold us back with pride and arrogance, and to truly humble ourselves so that all people can be lifted up and raised up. Let's be honest, folks. United States of America, we have everything. Now, what can we do in this country and through this church to give pride, character, and dignity to those who really need it? Who is in your life? You probably already know who they are. Who in your life does not have a place at a table? Who is isolated and lonely in the house next door or across the street? Who in your life is feeling like nobody sees me, knows me, understands me? Who's the new kid? And how can you be the one who invites them and says, "Come, friend, come sit with me"? If you'll pray with me. Lord God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, on paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out in good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. In the name of love, whose name is Jesus. Amen.